in the image of God, let's say. Someone, despite your flaws of divine intrinsic value, who could hypothetically be a light on the hill, hard as that is to believe. And then watch and see when you're where you should be. And maybe you're only a bit of the way there, and you're kind of, your life is hell to purgatory, that's it. There's very little glimpse of paradise, but purgatory beats the hell out of hell. And so maybe you can move from hell into purgatory, that would be something, and maybe when you're there now and then, you're getting a little bit beyond that. You think, right at this moment, for whatever reason, I'm not doing something so terrible that I'm in hell. What is going on? What's the circumstance? What did I allow to happen that made this possible? It's a form of awakening in the most profound sense, to notice when that happens. Then you think, could I be there more often? 1% more often. That compounds very quickly, If it's 1% a week for a year, you're going to be there like twice as long in a year as you were before you started. And God only knows how good you could get at that if you didn't do anything other than that, let's say. If you really committed to that, God only knows what your life could be like in 5 years or 10 years. Maybe you could be in that state all the time. And who knows what effect you'd have on you and your family and the people around you if you were in that state. And that's something worth thinking about too. And maybe that's a good thing to close. We have this notion, developed not least in your great country, that people have an intrinsic worth, that we're sovereign citizens, that we're all possessed of a voice that redeems the state. That's why we have an inalienable right to free speech, let's say, because we're a necessary corrective to the blindness and archaic nature of the state. We're the living eyes of the dead king. And maybe that's really true. Then you think, well, if the world isn't everything you want it to be, set your house in perfect order before you criticize the world. If the world isn't everything that you want it to be, maybe you're not acting the way you should. Because there's some intimation in our deepest ideas that the weight of the world rests on your shoulders. Now that's a terrible thing to think. But maybe it's true. And it's an open question. How much of the mess that you see around you would vanish if the mess that you could put straight was put straight? And you know this too to some degree, because to the degree that you've not become entirely embittered and cynical and hopeless, you know perfectly well that if you put your mind to it and you make the proper sacrifices, there are things you can set straight. And that if you do that diligently, things actually improve. And so, because otherwise, if you didn't believe that, you wouldn't act at all. Maybe you just turn to completely catastrophic